Okay. And just another example of certainly civil society organizations and individuals comprised thereof, making very specific efforts. But in these types of articles, what I've found, this very, very, very quick and dirty discourse analysis here, please don't hold me too much to it. Accountable, but not that much. What's interesting is these articles don't always talk about the building, like the bricks and mortar part. You have civil society organizations that are focused much more on the community building capacity activities, and not so much on the building part. So there really is a disconnect there, which is highly problematic, and certainly another topic which I'd be happy to talk about. Okay. So what I found, certainly representations of the issue, and I think we have to implicate how we go about doing that. They're constructions by the media, what's sexy, the emotion that often is evoked from those. And the problems that, from my perspective, as a result, they become self-reinforcing. Because you're focusing on the individual, because that's much more palatable. And the type of awareness as a result of how we're portraying the issues leads to limited action, because it's so, it seems so unattainable, impossible. And I don't believe that it is. And certainly with the Atkinson experience, it's not necessarily impossible. So what we often find, again, the royal we avoid addressing issues related to structural barriers. We often look for excuses to avoid commitment. Too much money, impossible, too much work, too complex. You hear people saying, find a house and a job and then the issue will be resolved. That sort of crap. A couple of other things, other articles. This is out of Calgary. That when solutions certainly are determined to be structural, you have this polarization occurring. Right? It's us, them, as a result. So there's a lot of pushback. I think that's certainly endemic within how we view a number of the issues or the complex interaction between the individual and the structural. A couple of other ones. Tab for housing, cure in millions. It's all money. Money. Right? Rezoning plan denial on hold. Vote defers decision on affordable housing project. I think that one was Edmonton. No, Leamington. Okay. In Edmonton, we're facing a bit of a struggle right now where there are attempts, and it's interesting, attempts by some developers to build affordable housing in a very posh hoity-toity community. And interestingly enough, a number of the faculty in the Faculty of Education live in that part of town. Right? So they don't necessarily want to have affordable housing in their place, but they'll talk social justice. We all do that. I'm not necessarily placing a value on those approaches, but the inherent contradictions and tensions, we have to grapple with ourselves, and we have to be willing to do that in this work. And certainly some give and take, common vision needed for housing. This one, I believe, was also out of Calgary. All right, some give and take. But my concern has always been who continues to give and how much and what are they giving, but who continues to take. I was surprised in reading one article a couple of weeks ago out of a newspaper in Ontario promoting building affordable housing, you're going to provide housing for the homeless and disadvantaged and all this wonderful stuff because we're partnering with private industry, corporations, all this wonderful thing, which is fine, but where's society responsibility? It's still, it's a prophylactic. Right? It's not addressing the issue. People are going to have housing. Wonderful. Thrilled about that. But we're still going to have the problem. Right, and we're certainly starting to shed some light on the complexity. Being here certainly I feel is part of my role. But I also feel we're building on misperceptions and misattributions. Does poverty matter to oil-rich Albertans? That annoys me now. Because it does. Right. It does. Right, so what do you mean by Alberta? So we're still homogenizing groups. We're still building on emotion. We're not actually talking to the issues. And this is just a very, very crude discourse analysis. So, representations of the issue, we tend to avoid, turning the representation back onto us and how we're grappling with it and how we're understanding it. I strongly feel and advocate that we really need to reframe our understanding by reshaping the discourse, by asking different questions, and recognize and put everywhere out there it's not just an individual problem. It's actually a combination of individual and certainly structural. We need to recognize what we're asking has an impact on what we're going to get. And we know that seems somewhat trivial. But when you're on the street asking individuals, do you want housing? Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to have something over here. But do you want community? What's that? Right? But I want to live with 14 of my friends. No, sorry, it's only for a couple and a child. But that's not my family. So you can't have housing. So let's be aware of what questions we're asking. And how do we ask them, certainly. And how do we listen in particular? What are we excluding? And most of all, how do we see? I certainly support the headline here. Affordable housing policy needs leadership, needs vision. Making housing types throughout the city is crucial. And I believe in there, types leave sort of an opening, an entry point, if you will, to engaging in looking at connections, looking at a sense of belonging. So I recall a couple of years ago, and I did this deliberately for Ian, I was organizing a conference, and I slotted Ian in a very specific topic, and Ian being a historian, sort of looking ahead to co-ops, and Ian was talking about the past. But I find it particularly relevant, wherever we can, to remind ourselves where we're from. Right? So I think we should return to history. Homage to Ian. Return to history and look at what we've done and what's worked, and not keep on repeating. So shifting away from construction that perpetuates separation and building on connection and reintroducing meaningful collaboration. And we have strategies. We know how to do this. This is nothing new. But this collaboration has to be with some form, with partnerships that can lead to some form of action or a praxis. These aren't just academic terms. The field is happening every day. We have to listen as academics, and also the field has to listen to us. Because we're outsiders, and being on the outside can actually be very helpful as well. Our priorities, certainly leadership, self-sufficiency. We should be stressing those types of characteristics, but vision. Whose vision? I worry in the case of Atkinson, we lost our leader in the community in 1998. It's been problematic ever since. Other organizations, cooperatives, somebody comes in with a vision, wonderful, but we rely on a single person, rely on that leader, often male. It's a different issue. Right? Rely on that leader, rely on a single vision without actually trying to be much more all-encompassing. It's not sustainable. So I like to think of leadership without leaders. That's a different issue. And so we're looking to the past and present cases for models. So like Quint Development, some of the work that they're doing in Saskatoon, excellent stuff. Coupling cooperative development with different types of innovations, community economic development, and so on. It's getting at the issues, getting at the complexity, and dealing with all sorts of other problems as well. Certainly New Dawn out on the East Coast, and Atkinson Housing, starting to include that in the pantheon of examples. So now I'm going to shift a little bit towards Atkinson in terms of demonstrating certainly the language that I'm using and why I'm sort of thinking of these issues in this way. A little bit of background, built in 1968 in downtown Toronto. I lived there, by the way, for 25 years. First conversion of public housing to cooperative housing in Canada. Main issues was security of tenure. People wouldn't lose their home as soon as they actually had a decent income. Wouldn't be forced to move out. Safety and security issues, seeking local solutions, and are building a sense of community. And as I'm going to show about 5 minutes of a documentary that was made and see how highly problematic that in and of itself has been. The focus for the conversion is really on building on their existing assets. And a new community has emerged, not one that a lot of people anticipated, but collectively they're certainly fostering individual growth and a number of other initiatives by asking questions, dealing with conflicts as a community, as a group.